Okay, so welcome to Whistle While You Work, the podcast where we share the practical tips, strategies, inspiration and motivation. And at the moment we are in lockdown, so we're currently doing this on a Zoom call, and we've moved to bi-weekly, which is cool. So we're using new technology, so please bear with us. So in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about who you're spending time with at the moment. So who are you locked up with? So who have you got no choice but to spend time with?
Actually, the question might be, who are you not spending time with, isn't it? Which is everyone. But yeah, we wanted to just kind of take 15-20 minutes just to do a bit of a reflection and give you guys some thoughts around whether this has changed how you feel about some of your relationships, whether there's some really great things coming out of this, and thinking about who do you spend your time with that makes you feel great versus who is it at this difficult time that's kind of adding to that stress. Now, one of the other things we should say, guys, if you're listening to this, very excitingly, you can see this as a video, which I hope you will do, because I have earrings on. I've really made an effort after on day 4, week 3 of week 2 of lockdown. I finally made an effort and actually put some earrings on, and I might have actually brushed my hair as well. So do please go and check us out. We'll put the link on there for you. You can see us in person as well as listen to us today.
I think it's quite funny. I think by the end of this, we'll no doubt we'll be in full makeup and like a cocktail dress or something.
It's getting more and more. I was thinking I might just start wearing some kind of like costume, so I turn up dressed as a lobster or something, because that's essential, isn't it? So why don't we start with kind of where we are at the moment? So Cheryl, who are you locked up with right now?
So I'm locked up. We're calling it lock up. No, we started calling it lock up rather than lockdown. So I'm currently locked up. I'm in lockdown with Leah, my daughter. So yeah, it's and I had to. I guess I had the choice, and it's a difficult choice, or it's a blessing, to kind of decide where to spend kind of lockdown, because for one reason or another, we have cats. So at home, so with my husband Dave, we've got cats. Who Leah is now allergic to, having moved out. Leah has asthma, so obviously, being with cats with asthma, and when there's a virus going around that affects your respiratory, isn't the best of ideas. So I came over to Birmingham to kind of keep her company. So I'm in lockdown with Leah, which has been really, really nice actually, because and I think it's something that you said, Emma, at the start of this. This is a real gift of time, because when do you really have the time to go for walks, with kind of members of your family and kind of like reconnect. So I've really, I felt really blessed actually to have that time with them. We've had some really, really cool chats. So that's been really nice. So yeah, so I'm in lockdown with Leah. And how about you?
Well, I'm on my own. So ironically, I do have asthma, and I'm locked up with all my cats. And I'm locked down on my own. So I said yesterday, this is, I think, day 16 of me not actually seeing anyone in person, which is really interesting, because one of the things that we talk about quite a lot, and if you come on one of our retreats, you'll see it as well, is we talk about who you spend time with and who you choose to surround yourself with. And I think I had not realised how I really enjoy my own company, and I spend a lot of time kind of on my own, but I go out a lot and I go and see people a lot. So, Cheryl, you and I would see each other probably once a week in person and chat kind of, every other day, as it were. But there are people who I see all the time. So it's been really interesting for me to have none of that. And it's actually caused some kind of reflection for me around who do I want to have in my life moving forward, and who kind of actually has been really helpful during this time and who hasn't. But before we get into that, please tell me that you and Leah have had at least some moments of stress. Have you had any clashes?
None. I mean, I suppose we're both pretty laid back, to be honest. We haven't had any clashes. There's been the odd moment where I think, because Leah's a real kind of neat freak, and so I always sense that there's been the odd moment where she's kind of like, maybe looked around, the kitchen or something, and thought, oh my gosh, that thing is out of place, Mum, sit there. But generally we're kind of quite easygoing, and we've got into quite a good routine.
And there's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because I know a lot of people have been talking about how difficult a lot of relationships have become in lockdown, and I'm of the belief that relationships don't really change. A bit like people, you see who they really are. So when you're under extreme stress, the relationship kind of comes out at its very base level, you know. So if your relationship is, or, you know, your friendship, whatever, is normally kind of quite superficial, or normally based on the fact with a lot of us, you know, we don't see our partners day to day, and, you know, we're kind of busy all the time and we distract ourselves. It's no surprise to me that when you're kind of forced to sit with somebody 24 hours a day, it becomes strained.
Yeah.
You know, particularly if you're not used to dealing with that, I don't say conflict, but used to dealing with that challenge with people.
Yeah, I guess it can do, definitely. I mean, there's something about, you know, because we've been away together several times now in terms of retreats and stuff like that. And, you know, the first time we went away together, we kind of talked about how we were quite considerate roommates. And I think there is something about, you know, and not that you've got to put on an act or anything like that. It's not about that, but it's about being considerate of somebody's space, you know, considerate of somebody's space. I mean, there are times when Leah and I just kind of sit in silence, you know, because obviously we're still doing our own bits of work and whatever, but sometimes we're just reading or we're just being, you know, and we don't want to kind of like be kind of talking at 200 miles an hour. So there is just something I think about just, you know, respecting people's space, respecting that actually. So if you're in lockdown with somebody, I think respecting that people are going through different emotions on different days. Sometimes you're going to have an up day. Sometimes somebody might have a down day, and don't necessarily force, you know, kind of your feelings on somebody. Don't always feel that you've got to drag them out of whatever it is they're feeling. Sometimes just kind of giving them the space to feel that, I think, is probably quite useful around about now.
No, I would agree. I did have a lovely image there of you guys just sat in complete silence, but just looking at the wall. But I know you meant to be more productive. And also, I do happen to know that because you shared this on social media, that Leah has got annoyed with you because you were making noise while she was trying to film her YouTube video.
That is an experience, because, you know, so we're in an apartment and it's relatively large, but the walls are like paper thin. So even now, like recording this, like she shouldn't be filming. So yeah, last week when she was filming something, and I think I was on the phone in here. I think somebody had called me actually because I was doing some work. Somebody had called me, and so I start speaking, and then actually I just get this text through WhatsApp: "Can you please go outside?" So I literally had to exit the apartment and go outside so I could actually have this conversation. It has its challenges, but it's interesting. I was just thinking there about something you were saying in terms of, you know, connection with people face to face. So we've been going out running, and when I'm running at home, which is like in Shropshire, where it's a lot more countrified, you know, when you see people and you're out running, everyone sort of says, you know, morning, morning, you do all that kind of thing. Not so much here in the city that I'm in, you know, in Birmingham, it tends to not be like that. But I've made a point of starting to do that, you know, and I said to Leah, actually, I said, for all we know, those individuals that we're seeing out for their walk or their run, they could be on their own, you know, and actually we might be the only person that they've seen that day. So face to face. So how nice is it to just say morning, you know, and kind of, so I'm kind of making a point of trying to do that.
Absolutely. So given the fact that, you know, we normally say, and we've done a podcast on this before, you know, you're some of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. How are you kind of keeping in touch with your extended family and your friendships and, you know, your work colleagues? How are you kind of structuring that? Because I know it's all WhatsApp or house party. What are you doing? Are you just kind of in groups, or are you calling people individually, or are you having kind of set times with people? How are you doing it?
Yeah, I'm doing a bit of both, I guess. So I've almost got like a mental list of, you know, and it's a bit like, you know, like Friends, there is that analogy of like, you know, roots and branches and leaves and all of that, if anybody wants to look at that. But yeah, I've got a mental list, obviously, of people that you want to make sure that you're like calling, you know, every day or every other day, just because. And I think especially if you are used to seeing them beforehand anyway, you're going to kind of do that. So there's almost that mental list. And I'm always trying to make sure it's FaceTime, because I think FaceTime is so much nicer to actually see somebody's face. Is nice where that's house party. But then in terms of, I guess the one new routine that I've set up, and I think I might have mentioned it on the last podcast, was about this extended family Zoom call. Yeah. So a once a week thing. Took a lot of energy setting up, but it's definitely worth it, I would say. So whether that's, I think if you've got, you know, friendship groups or extended family, or, you know, maybe just like work colleagues that you normally have a lot of banter with, I would almost say don't just rely necessarily on just the work type calls. You know, try to create more of like a water cooler type call, you know, just a call that's literally
chat,
goof around and whatever, do you know what I mean, and have a bit of banter, or bants as the youth say.
Do you? Oh dear. You see, it's interesting because how can I put it? I got really into House Party when it first arrived, yeah, and I was like, oh great, we can see everybody. And then I realised that obviously the great thing about seeing people face to face is you don't have to stare at your own face for the whole time. And House Party really does force you. So if any of you haven't used it yet and you have any kind of qualms about how you look when you're kind of, you know, speaking, do be careful because your face is massive on the screen, a little bit like this actually. But what I've started doing is, and I was kind of saying this to Cheryl this morning, which is one of the reasons we've talked about this, is I would say I've got kind of almost 3 levels of people at the moment. And I've got, one is the people who I speak to every day. So I have probably 3 or 4 people who I actually house party with every day. And one of the things I found quite interesting was setting a time for that and actually setting a time to do it. Now, actually, interestingly, Cheryl and I, if we're going to speak in the day, normally we'll speak at 11, won't we? That's kind of the time. I've got some other people who I call at different points. And as you guys all heard on the last podcast where we talked about how rigid I have now become on my timings, it's quite important because one of the things that does happen when people hear you're on your own is they besiege you with calls. Yeah. So you end up being like, hi, you know, millions of kind of people coming through, which is lovely, but can be quite exhausting. So I have those people who I kind of speak to every day or every 2 days. I've got a couple of people who I'm in contact with all the time on WhatsApp as normal. And then we've got kind of scheduled in weekly face-to-faces. And you say you've got a mental list. I've actually got a real list that I'm ticking off just to make sure I'm checking in with people. Because we all, at this time, it's also easy to assume that everybody's either fine or everybody's having a hard time. So I like that kind of checking in. And then I have a kind of next level of people who are, you know, still friends, but perhaps I'm kind of realizing they're more peripheral friends. And this has really brought that home to me. And although I might check in with them, you know, perhaps with the WhatsApp maybe once a week or so, or, you know, I've been dropping them some mail maybe through all that type of stuff, I'm not really close enough to kind of sit through their emotional challenges at the moment, and neither would I expect them to do it for me. And that's really interesting because I'm kind of seeing people who I used to spend an awful lot of time with almost coming into that 3rd level, because there's a difference, isn't there, between a friendship that's around connection versus a friendship that's around convenience.
Yeah.
And I think this is really helping us all to understand what are those connections in our life which might be lovely, but they don't stand up to a really challenging time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because people have got different priorities, haven't they? You know, and when priorities don't match, because they won't for any of us at the moment, you know, how do you kind of make sure you check in with somebody without being on the phone with them all the time? And that's been a really interesting thing for me to reflect on at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely quite a challenging time, I think, for how you sort of keep those connections with the friends and kind of almost, as you said, how you, I don't want to say choose the friends that you're going to keep connected with, but there'll be days when you will know what you need, and there will be days when you have more to offer to certain friends. And
Absolutely.
I think at this time, you know, because it's such a strange time, and we're all under the surface, we're actually all going through quite a lot of emotional turmoil. We're all kind of managing quite well, you know, we're all kind of being like swans, but the reality is there is a lot of stuff going under there. So there'll be days when we need different things. You know, we need those friends that are going to pick us up, that are going to cheer us up, make us laugh, the funny memes, whatever. There'll be days when we'll need, you know, proper deep conversation with, you know, maybe friends that we haven't spoken to for years or whatever.
Absolutely.
And there'll be days where we have some of that to offer for somebody else. So I think it's a really interesting time for just being aware of what we need, you know, for our emotional well-being and all of those sorts of things, and what our friends and our family need as well.
Well, yeah, and being kind of cognizant of how do you manage the two together? Because, you know, I have seen people during this time who are running themselves into the ground, worrying about everybody else, you know, people who are kind of separate from friends and family, and are really, really worried about it, and are kind of, you know, taking on that emotion every day and being really kind of just upset. And equally, I have seen people who are kind of like, you know, look, I'm getting on with it. This is the bubble I'm in at the moment. I have to get on there. And I think there's something really interesting, as you say, around thinking, and I'm definitely doing this at the moment, giving people the chance to kind of decide whether they want to have contact with you or not. And that's one of the reasons why some of you may have seen on LinkedIn this week, I posted a feelings wheel, which interestingly, which is so you can actually pinpoint what you are apart from fine, because I hate the word fine, right? The word fine, as we've said before, basically means don't ask me, I don't want to talk to you about it. I'm not having this conversation with you. And it was really interesting. Someone kind of commented on it and said, oh, they felt it was really skewed towards negative emotions. And I said, well, I don't think any emotion is negative because it just is. And at this time, you know, you can feel whatever you want to feel. But it was really interesting. My kind of rationale on that was because we find it really easy to say if we're feeling good stuff. However, it's really difficult for us to unpick if we're not, because our culture still teaches us that happiness is what we should strive for, as opposed to feeling everything. And so what I've started doing with a lot of my friends is saying, you know, how are you today? Not how you're feeling, but how are you today, right? And what word would sum up today that is not fine? And it's really interesting to watch when they correspond or when they don't. So I had one yesterday. I chatted to one of my very good friends yesterday morning, and I said, I have nothing to say, which you know is rare. I was like, I have nothing to say. And she went, I have nothing to say either. So we sat remotely, just drank our coffee together because nothing's happened. You know what I mean? I was like, oh. Yeah. It's, you know, it's the same. It's the same. It's, you know, it's this. Or even, you know, we spoke, didn't we? I had a time, probably, what day was it? Probably 10 days ago now, where I was having a really difficult day, and I even messaged you, didn't I? And I said, I'm not chatting to anyone today. I'm going back to bed. And you went, no problem at all. You call me whenever you feel like it. And it's that ability, I think, at the moment to be really honest and to give that honesty back. That's what we're learning.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are learning a lot, I believe, about people, other people, you know, humanity, how we connect to other people. I mean, I was saying to you sort of before this call, I'm loving some of the stuff on YouTube at the moment, which very much is about human connection, kind of on what that looks like and the differences and the similarities and the common ground and the middle ground, etc. And I kind of hope that this is one of the things that we take out of this time, you know, so as part of the new normal, we are better in tune with ourselves, our own emotions, our own feelings. We don't, as you say, we don't just like suppress the negative feelings, you know, so we kind of like learn to recognize them, and we are kind of, you know, more empathetic, more tolerant with other people. I'm just hoping that that's something that we take going forwards. And I think we've still got a lot of learning to do in that space.
Well, luckily, I think we're going to have a lot of time to learn in. It's my gut feel. I don't think, much as I'd like to believe that I'll be skipping out to see you next week, I don't think that's going to be happening. And I think there's something around, you know, how do we start to use this time for the better? And one thing I would urge you, if you are at home at the moment and you are, you know, perhaps with your children or perhaps with your family, or, you know, it might be feeling fantastic and you might be feeling really connected, or you might be feeling it's too much and perhaps you're seeing your work colleagues and everything. There's something around not letting other people's kind of thoughts and behaviours bring you into a drama. So this is particularly true in a work scenario, because a lot of us really love drama at work, because it makes us feel alive in jobs that otherwise wouldn't exist, right? So there's something that I've always been trying to be really mindful of is, you know, if you are having all your senses triggered by drama at work, drama at work, drama at work, and I don't mean people who've lost roles at the moment, I don't mean people on furlough, I mean people, you know, a little bit like us who are kind of really management roles, but, you know, you're not really sure what your role is at the moment, so everybody just gets overexcited and it gets a bit stressy. Do just take a breath and even step away from family and try and make sure you're getting some time on your own that isn't with all those work calls coming in, isn't with all the family calls coming in. And like you, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, you know, I've been listening to a lot of kind of you know, kind of audiobooks, inspirational speakers and stuff, and actually I've been speaking to people who I wouldn't normally speak to, because it just gives you a moment of respite out of the drama that can often be caused by us going round and round and round and round in our heads. And then having people adding that on, because workplaces are still, I think, 9 times out of 10 emotionally illiterate, you know, and it is difficult at this time for people to remain completely motivated on conference calls where everyone's just talking about the same thing over and over again. So go and find some other input, like you with your YouTube, you know, like having conversations with people else. Go and like listening to this. In fact, like the book club. So it's our book club tomorrow. And I'm really excited because actually we've got some people on there who have never met any of us before, which is fantastic. So it'll be a great way just to have some conversations that don't have any emotional weight behind them. It's just about a book, and that can be a great relief.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you're right. You're completely right, Emma, in terms of that. I still believe that corporates, and particularly bigger corporates, have a lot of work to do around the emotional stuff, you know. And it's typically called, you know, EQ, whatever it be. But there is a lot of work to do around that. I hope that that this space that we're being given, and almost like this reflection on us as humanity, is giving us as individuals a lot more time to kind of do the thinking about, you know, kind of like emotions, what's important, who am I connected to. So we've got the book club coming up tomorrow, probably today by the time this is released. Yep. But I'd love to point people to, because, you know, in the conversation around being connected, we often connect to people that think just like us, or, you know, we kind of like the same things or whatever. But the thing that I'm loving the most, I think, on YouTube at the moment is Jubilee Media, as you know, we were saying. And they've got this brilliant kind of program called Middle Ground, which is really where they bring two, you know, kind of like opposing views. So it might be atheists and Christians, or, you know, liberals and conservatives, and they bring them together and they ask questions to try to understand the middle ground. And for me, I mean, it's just a really good human experiment anyway, but just understanding how people can connect even when they have completely opposing views. Yeah. So what I would say is, if you've maybe got kind of like friends or family members that you maybe haven't always seen eye to eye with, or, you know, think differently about things, and so maybe you're avoiding them during this period of lockdown, understand when it's okay to avoid them, because, you know, for your own kind of like safety. But potentially, you know, is now a time actually when you can start to reach out and, you know, kind of put those olive branches out there, or just start to think quite differently about things. I just think it's a really interesting period of discovery. So that would be my one recommendation as well.
It's fascinating. And I've watched, I know you've sent me some of the Jubilee stuff, and they've been just really interesting and kind of non-heated, you know, like kind of passionate, but without the emotion. A time when for so many of us in our connective lives, emotions are running very high, because all those negative emotions that, you know, people struggle to articulate and feel are all bubbling away. We can't articulate them, and they blow up in a scenario that is not, you know, not helpful. And I think, you know, there's something I've been watching a lot of. In fact, we'll put a link out for you guys so you can see some of the resources that we've been watching. I've been watching a lot of Instagram videos where people really kind of chart the ups and downs, because as somebody said this morning on one I was watching, it is such a unique experience, and that one minute you can feel really quite fine and really quite hopeful, and the next minute you feel absolutely awful and really down. And one thing I would say to a lot of you, and it's something I did for quite a while at one point, and it helped me make some big life changes, is if you find that you feel particularly down after speaking to certain people, just make a note of it, because people can love you very much and be fantastic, you know, kind of friends or relatives to you, but not know how to help you in difficult times. And it is really useful at this type of point to kind of start, as Cheryl says, shielding yourself from that type of stuff. So if you know, I'll give you an example. I can't speak to my dad on the phone. He drives me absolutely insane, right? He's difficult. It just doesn't work for me. And every time I spoke to him, I would get upset, and that upset would last for about 2 hours before I pulled myself out of it. So now I just don't speak to him on the phone. I email him.
Yeah.
That's fine, you know? So you are perfectly within your rights at this time to start thinking about actually how you want to kind of have those relationships moving forward. And if these times are really showing you the relationships you really want to keep really close to you, you perhaps didn't realize how much you valued, versus the ones where actually you love them very much, but they're okay to be just a little bit further away at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and I think, you know, that's probably a really good point to end on in terms of, you know, what do you need kind of at this time? It is a very strange time. I'm going to stop using the word unprecedented. I'm going to see how many times I can not say that word each day, because it's just we almost need a new word for unprecedented. But it's probably a good time to finish there in terms of, you know, what is it you need at this time, and it may be connecting and, you know, kind of reaching out to people that you haven't previously thought of.
Yeah, and what can you give to others, you know? I've had a lot of very kind people reach out to me and have some great conversations, but at the same time, you know, you don't necessarily want to have kind of superficial conversations at the moment, so do just be aware of that when you're having those kind of chats with people. You know, there is a more open and honest level at the moment, and I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely. Perfect. And that is a wrap.
It is.
So tune in. So we're publishing these pretty much every Tuesday and Thursday, and we have still got some of the usual podcasts, obviously, that we're dropping in. But if you want to connect with us, you can still find us on our website, which is reboot.global. So if anybody wants to book in some time with myself or Emma, you can do. We're going to be putting lots more content out there for you to kind of enjoy during this time.
We will be, and if you're interested in the book club, please do let us know. We'll also be doing a roundup of kind of the big themes that came out of it. So if you can't attend, do tune in, because we'll be having just a 10-minute chat around what kind of people thought about it. And we hope you're keeping safe and well, and you know, connecting with the people you want to, and looking after yourself. So bye. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.